This is A Geek Leader. Hey you guys, John Rada back again with episode 64 of A Geek Leader, and today on the show I have a special guest. It's Kahlia Braswell. She is the founder of INTech Camp from Girls, and we talk about how to motivate girls to join technology early on. So give it up for Kahlia Braswell. Hello everybody. Today on the show we've got Kahlia Braswell, and Kahlia is the executive director at INTech Camps. And Kahlia, if you could tell us a little bit about how you got started in technology, where you are today, and what is INTech Camp?
Sure. So I got started in technology, I would say the fourth grade, maybe before that, but that's when we first, got our first computer in my home. And I was just so fascinated with just this mysterious gray box. And my mom only let me play the Mavis Beacon teaches typing game. That was the only thing I could do unsupervised. Everything else had to have her supervision, so I wouldn't break it. But that turned into her asking me questions because I was just learning so much so fast on the computer. And so from there, I went to a technical high school in Charlotte that was fairly new, Phillip O Academy of Technology. Went to the IT Academy, and my ninth grade year, I learned how to program. I believe we were using visualbasic.net, and I was just amazed that I could program on one side, have all this code, but then on the other side, there's a interface that people can interact with, never knowing what I did on the other side. And it was just amazing to me that I could do that. And so I kind of went down a programming track at Phillip O, took a few networking classes. So I was just super grateful that I was able to take those kind of classes in high school, because I didn't know, until later on, until I got into this nonprofit world, that this is something that actually isn't offered to most students in high school. And so from there, I took AP computer science and all of that. And then I went to NC State and got a computer science degree, and later went to UNC Charlotte for a master's in IT. So that's kind of my tech journey. I've just always been into technology, have internships and things of that sort. My most recent job was working at Apple's headquarters out in Cupertino, California, as a user experience designer. So I can't talk about much of what I did at work because it's super private, but I did do a lot of user experience and research for enterprise applications. So my customers were Apple employees, which is pretty cool. A lot of some of the products I worked on, all Apple employees from corporate to retail touched. So the idea of that was pretty cool. So INTech Camp, I started while I was getting my master's, and it was kind of as a response to the lack of computer science and technology related curriculum and activities for girls in middle school at the time. Again, like I said, I didn't know, the education that I was getting in high school was, I wouldn't say it's revolutionary, but I didn't know that it wasn't common. And so going through my degree program and thinking back on my journey, I'm like, okay, well, I benefited a ton from having early exposure to tech. So what can I do to be the change? So fast forward 4 years later, here I am running INTech full time. I quit my job at Apple, moved back to Charlotte because I'm just dedicated to the work, and seeing the girls' passion and excitement for technology really keeps me going. So here I am. This is what I'm doing now.
Well, that's great. There's some age difference between me and you, but I'm curious of what was that first computer? Do you remember the specs on it? Do you remember anything about it?
A little bit, yeah. It was an E-Machines.
E-Machines. I remember E-Machines.
Yeah, it was I can't remember I have a picture of it though, because I show students all the time, and they're like, what is that? But I remember, John, I remember our computer being slow, and I'm like, all right, well, I want to update the RAM in it. And my mom trusted me. I was in high school by then, but so by high school, she's like, okay, you can do whatever. So I ordered some memory and put it in and make the computer faster. So I was just super duper into it. But we had that computer at least until I went to college. So from fourth grade through, my ninth grade year, I'm at my freshman year in college.
Yeah, I remember my my first computer that that I really worked on. I mean, I had a Commodore 64 back in the day, but we got a 286 that my neighbor and I, he worked at NCR and he would bring home parts and we put it together. And I remember adding RAM to that and, playing with Windows 3.1 and, having fun with that.
I mean, that was a fun time. Now we have MacBook Pros that we can't even touch the inside because it's all molded together.
Yep. Yeah, I know. That's one of the things I was, the new Mac Pros that you can't even take the hard drives out. They're all like on, it's almost like an iPad on steroids.
Yeah, basically you can't do anything.
So I'm curious about INTech Camp, and I have a daughter, so that's, it's fascinating to me to hear about doing things for kids at school. How do you guys relate, or do you do any work with STEM, or how does it relate to the STEM and STEAM initiatives that schools are doing in your community?
Yeah, well, we focus on the T, the technology part. I'm pretty adamant about that because, as STEAM, I saw STREAM the other day, as that acronym continues to grow, I'm like, okay, all of that is great and it all works together, but we're teaching girls how to code. So our girls are coming in and learning HTML and CSS, and they're building websites about social issues. So it's not just coding, but it's also bringing in this social awareness part, in which Gen Z is actually super duper into, what's social justice and things of that sort. Like that's what the data is showing apparently about that generation. And so it actually works pretty well. And our scholars are like coming up with the ideas that they want to talk about through their websites. And it's super fascinating because I don't think I was doing that in middle school. Talking about topics like racism, LGBT issues, depression, having a safe space when you're being bullied, animal poaching. They're not all super duper serious, but, they're coming up with these ideas. But we also teach Python and Raspberry Pi. And so we're really, really focused on the technology aspect of the STEM initiatives, and just kind of, being empowering, showing our scholars other women. So we have 3 pillars: inform, inspire, innovate. And the inspire part of that is bringing other women in to say, okay, you can do it too. Here's my journey. Like my friend Shekinah, I talk about her all the time. She actually now works at Apple out in Cali, but prior to that, she was at Red Ventures here in Fort Mill, North Carolina. And Shekinah actually studied film in undergrad. So she was a film major at UNCW, and then went to a 1-year intensive program at Elon to learn how to code. She actually worked at Apple retail at that time, went to Red Ventures as a front-end developer, and now she's out in California at Apple. And that's something that I kept pushing her to do because I was out there and I'm like, hey, you should come. So anyway, we kind of tag team, but I love telling these stories because there's no one path to getting in tech. I feel like mine was pretty linear. I did computing in high school, college, masters, but not everyone has that same journey. And so we're really adamant about having the role models and mentors in the room as well.
So how is it that a girl would get registered or signed up or get, become a scholar? How does that process work?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we normally open up registration in the spring so up until now we've done a variety of things. We have a 1-day camp, which is a Saturday experience that we do in different locations across the Carolinas, both North and South. And then we also have a 1-week camp, which is a 5-day experience in the summertime. And so we normally open up our registration in the summer. And honestly, John, I was telling someone yesterday about the recruitment strategy. We have partnered with schools in the past, but sometimes, a lot of our registration just kind of sells itself out by word of mouth. So we put it on social media. A great way to stay in the loop with us is by being on our mailing list, in which users can go to our website, intechcamp.org, to do that. And, the mailing list obviously gets the information first. And then we do social media and we just kind of let it grow that way. So if you want to get involved, get your daughter signed up for our camps. INTech, INTECH camp.org is the best way.
Mm-hmm. So my wife is in technology. I know there's not a lot of females in technology, and it's been kind of one of those things where it's hard to, as a male, it's hard for me to put myself in your shoes or in other females that are in technology shoes and understand that there's kind of a deficiency there.
Yeah.
But one of the things that that I see both as a professor and as an IT director that hires people is that there is far fewer resumes for females applying to positions, and there's far fewer students in computer science that I'm seeing than there are males. What do you think the problem is with that, and what do you think we can do to better equip our girls to as they're growing up to be interested in technology and want to pursue those kind of careers?
Yeah, that's a tough question. It's a multifaceted problem. And honestly, my challenge with INTech is not trying to attack all of the problems, right? Because there's so many. But to your point about, I guess, enrollment in collegiate programs, I think there's a lot of factors with that. My take on it is a little untraditional, only because I obviously am a product of two universities, but I think with the future of work, and there's a lot of talk about the future of work, and what I've learned with technology is that it's all about what you can do and not necessarily about the degrees you have. And people may disagree with that. Because, if you're in IT sector in particular, not necessarily computer science, it's super certificate heavy. So it's like, I got the certificate, I can do this, and you can get a job that way. So I'm kind of personally shifting my focus from enrollment in computer science programs and degrees, because let's be honest, you can go into a 4-year program or even do an advanced master's and still not be able to get a job when you finish. And so, one thing that I try to focus on with INTech is the training part. So what skills can I give you so that when you leave me, you can either go get a job or create a side business for yourself. And so I think if we kind of shift our focus that way into the skills-based model of it, in lieu of saying, okay, you need to take AP computer science and AP calculus and AP physics to even be able to get into an NC State. What if you're just not good at calculus, right? Like, I didn't do all that great in math, but I survived AP calculus and all of the 3 calculus classes I had to take at NC State. But what if I would have gotten weeded out along the way? I had a computer science teacher tell me, like, he asked me how did I get to NC State, because he noticed that my algebra was a little weak. And this was a discrete math class in computer science. So, to that point about me having that encounter with a professor that could have very well weeded me out of that program, I knew I was able to persevere. And I think another part of this is, and this is, again, untraditional, but one thing that we're not talking about, we need to do skills-based training, but we also need to work on like the social and emotional awareness, right? Building people's confidence up, building these girls' confidence to say, okay, you're going to hit some stumbling blocks, but here's how you navigate it. Here are some resources so that if, your calculus skills aren't that strong, you can get help. A lot of people at NC State in particular got weeded out of the engineering department because of physics. That's not a computer science class. It's physics, taking it back to STEAM, right?
Wow. Physics, huh?
Yeah, it was tough. Physics for engineers at NC State, the second course at least, was tough. I dropped it one semester and I had to pick it up again, got a tutor, and was able to persevere. So I'm saying all of this just to kind of say we have to rethink the way that we approach these problems, because, putting so much pressure on students to go into this sector, into this field, can get overwhelming. But if we just make it fun, and continue to give them the skills so they can be like, okay, yes, I know HTML, CSS, Python, and so I can get around, maybe not being strong in other areas. But then also, again, building up that confidence, I think, is super duper key. I think that's the only reason why I made it through, to be quite honest. So
yeah, I hear you and I agree, because my undergraduate was actually in entrepreneurship and business administration, mostly because when I went through where I got my undergraduate, I exempted out of all math courses except for one if I went with business route. But if I went with computer science, I had to take like 2 more math courses. So I just said, I'll forget computer science. I'll go with business.
Exactly. And that's real. And I think, I don't know. That's why I look at the data, I use the data, and I take it with a grain of salt, because to your point, like, I remember in high school, I don't know if I should say this out loud on a podcast, but anyway, the AP Computer Science test, right? They administered us the wrong one.
Oh, man.
Right. So, you want to get into AP Computer Science stats. Well, okay, I took the class, but I didn't take the right test. So I was already taking a college, like a community college level course that would have gotten me the same credit at NC State. So me being the smart person said, well, I don't want to take the real AP Computer Science test because I'm already getting the credit through this other course that I'm taking. And so, you just think about little situations like that. And it's just kind of like, well, now the AP Computer Science data doesn't look all that great as far as like women taking the test, but I got the credit, so I don't need it.
That's right.
Yeah. No, I get you. And I agree 100%. And I had this discussion not too long ago with someone on the show. We were talking about education and this theory of whether or not, because he said that he didn't think that he would, if he had to do it over again, he would go to college. He would just, do a boot camp, learn the skills and go into the workforce because he feels like he wasted, 5 years of school. When he could have been gaining the skills that he needed for his job, in a matter of a few months. What are your thoughts on something like that?
I feel like people have to do what's right for them, right? And in the technology workforce and field, I feel like, that it depends on what your end game is and what your goal is, right? Like I am grateful for my computer science knowledge, right, and my degree. I do think that it helps me when I'm in the classroom teaching students. Like I taught some students this summer outside of my INTech camp, and I had to get into data structures. Well, I was able to teach it because I remembered it, and when students were asking me questions, I was able to answer them. You may not get the theory part from a program that's not like a traditional computer science program. But if you don't care about that, you're like, I just want a tech job, so I'm going to go to a program that can give me those skills, then I'm all for it. I just, again, everything isn't for everybody, and I realize that. And so when people ask me for advice, I'm like, okay, well, what exactly are you trying to do? They're like, hey, I want to learn how to code. Where should I start? And I'm like, that's a very broad question because there's so many different things that you can learn in tech to be able to get a tech job. So,
yeah, I agree with that, with that statement completely. Cause I started thinking about it, some companies require degrees. So if you, want to be more marketable, then yeah, go to college, get the degree. If you know where you want to work and you know that they don't require this kind of, degrees or they just require certain skill sets and experience, or if you want to start your own company, go get the skills, get out there and start your own company. I know there's some things like, I think the relationships that I made and the, friends that I built in college and coming out of my, social cocoon, I guess, if you will, in college kind of helped me out. And that was kind of the more valuable parts of college for me.
Yeah. The connections are key. And that's another part. And that's why, like, until now, I guess I try not to use buzzwords a lot, but people talk a lot about social capital. And that's why I'm so excited about the Inspire part of our program, because yes, I can teach you how to code, but I'm also introducing you to so many women that, when you need a recommendation letter or if you're interested in getting a PhD in computer science, like we can point you into those people. And now you have expanded your network because that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So what was it like starting INTech Camp? Like, what was it like starting this nonprofit? What was the experience like? How much work was it at the beginning? How did you go about, setting the vision and moving forward with this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually didn't intend to start my own coding camp for girls, to be quite honest. My intent was to try to bring another organization that was already established to the Carolinas. That didn't work out, but I was eligible for a grant, and I'd already talked to UNC Charlotte about partnering up to host this event. And so they were all for it. And so we had our first event in April of 2014, and the reaction from the scholars, the volunteers, the parents, like everybody was so excited. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I have to keep doing this. But that same year I moved to California for a year to intern at Apple. And so everything kind of came to a halt. And so the beginning days of INTech was a lot. It was a lot of me utilizing my network and my friends who were just really excited about the work. And then in 2015, I had the opportunity to partner with Teach for America South Carolina, and we somehow, some way, did 3 different camps in 3 different cities of South Carolina in one day. It was the most amazing, craziest thing I've ever done to date. And so, honestly, in the first 2-3 years, we were just kind of trying different things with different partners. Because then we did with the Urban League of Central Carolinas a 1-week camp in 2016. And that's kind of what kicked off our flagship, what is now our flagship program. So a lot of it was just kind of like opportunity. I kind of tried a few different things that just didn't work out with me being remote, as far as maybe having a club at a school or letting someone else run it while I was away. That didn't work up until 2017. We were able to execute 2 camps in North Carolina while I was at Apple. And so, it took a little trial and error with the help of partners who were able to keep our programming going. Now, I've been doing this full time since January of 2018, and it's been quite the roller coaster. In a good way, right? A lot of great things have happened. But I'm, as a leader and as newly executive, full-time executive director, understanding that, I'm good at a lot of things and I'm bad at some things. And so now I need dedicated people to help me. And so we're actually hiring a part-time program director so that, I can make the partnerships and get things set up in the vision, right? But then I need someone else that's super detail oriented that can come in and execute, make sure the volunteers are good, our scholars are great, and make sure that the program actually runs. That's the part that I'm not so good at. I can do it, but that doesn't, some people are super duper, they love operations and can, execute really well. I can do it, but I'm not great at it. And I understand that. And so I'm looking for someone to help with that. And again, like you said, the vision, right? Understanding what our vision was, because once upon a time, our goal was to expose 5,000 girls to technology in 5 years. That sounded great. But after a few months, that didn't sit well with me. I really didn't. I mean, the numbers sound great, but I wanted more on the impact scale. How many girls have we touched that are now maybe at my old high school here in Charlotte or at another school doing technology work and with plans to go study computer science later? Or if they don't want to study computer science, how many of them are now creating websites on their own for people for money? You know what I mean? Those are the kind of narratives that I want, more so than saying, yes, we've reached X amount of girls. That doesn't bring me joy. I want to be able to say, Amia, for instance, has come to an INTech summer camp 3 times. Her 3rd time, she did an alternative experience. She wants to be a teacher in our program. And yes, she's at Phillip O just like I was. Those are the narratives that I want.
Yeah, that sounds like, you were shooting for the numbers, but then you realize behind every number there's a story, and you want to make sure you have those stories. I think that's what compels people to help out with the movement and to be interested in the fact that you can tell a story of someone that succeeded. I know one of the things that when I'm talking to people, I've done a couple of talks at some middle schools where I was during STEM day or hour of code sessions where I've told stories about people that I taught that started their own company or did something, great. And if I could tell that single story, that makes a bigger impact than just saying, 5,000 people,
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are the future plans for INTech Camp and how are you planning on growing this? Are there other cities that you're going to be expanding to, or is that too far in the future?
Well, right now we are launching a high school program here in Charlotte in October. I'm excited because our first track of that program is going to be partnered with Facebook. They have a program called Engineer for the Week. So for 3 weeks, our scholars will learn about the Agile Scrum methodology. They'll be able to switch roles in that program, assume different roles. And then they'll be creating a game about a social issue. So still keeping our social issue theme going, but this time they'll be actually doing a game and they'll be competing nationally to get a all expenses paid trip to go visit Facebook. So how cool is that? So we're going to try, our vision for the high school program is that in the spring, we'll then take, our like super duper high performing, super interested scholars and do more of an intensive training on like, here's how you build a website for an actual client to get them an internship in the summer and see how that cycle goes. And yes, we are in Raleigh. So we're both in Charlotte and Raleigh. We have interest in other areas. I would love to go to DC or Atlanta. I just want to make sure that we are doing it strategically. I spoke about the work we did in South Carolina, but we've never gone back to South Carolina. And now my contacts down there no longer live there. So I just want to be very intentional about the communities we move into and understanding the landscape. I don't want to come in to a market that already has opportunities, but I'm getting requests from Atlanta a lot and DC as well. And so right now I kind of want to focus on our high school pilot here in Charlotte so that we can roll that out in Raleigh, where we already have a user base as well. And then also like activating Raleigh in a more strategic way as well. Right now, the only thing we offer in the area is our summer camp. And so getting someone there to kind of lead a chapter, if you will, in Raleigh so that we can respond to the needs, because like our summer camp in Raleigh sold out in a day. And we had a waiting list for upwards to 20 girls that we could have had a whole separate camp for. And so I want to respond to that. They're into this and they,
Well, Raleigh's a big tech community too. So there definitely should be, I imagine there's lots of parents out there that say, hey, I want my kids to, to learn this stuff and to go down that route, the same route that I did.
Yeah, because we had one scholar's mom who worked at Cisco, and so the whole week, are we going to go visit Cisco? Are we going? I'm like, so I had to tell this guy like, no, we're not going to go to Cisco. We were at other companies in RTP, but we didn't make it to Cisco. So maybe next year. But the fact that they were just asking and they're aware of where their parents work and what they do, I think is awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. So I want to go back to the diversity in technology and get more of your take of what can team leads or managers or people that are developers or software engineers or IT engineers, systems engineers, what can we do to kind of help spread the word of technology or help encourage others to get into the field that would help us be more diverse and just a better rounded group of folks?
Yeah, I have a few different things. I think, one thing that is talked about in this field of like, diversity and inclusion in tech is unconscious bias. Unconscious bias is something that's developed over time. It's something that we don't necessarily realize until you go through like a training. So if unconscious bias training is available through your organization or a community organization, I would say do it. Even for myself, even though I'm a double minority, like it's still super duper important for me to be aware of my biases. I think that's one thing. And then two, inviting, if you do have women working in tech in your company, on your department, as your direct report, bring them along with you. If you're going to a conference, encourage them to go to the conference, encourage them to speak at conferences, support them wanting to go speak at conferences. Grace Hopper happens every year around September, October, and it's the biggest women in tech conference in the world, I would say. I've been 3 times, and each time I had a different experience. Pay for them to go to Grace Hopper. It's expensive. I'll admit it, but it's a great experience because you're able to go and say, wow, look at all of these women in tech. And you really, really do, gain a community, and just be supportive and be able, when you're in rooms that don't have any representation from other minority groups, question it. Say, well, what can we do to be more intentional? There's so many women in tech, girls in tech, like programs that, I think companies could tap into for talent. And I think, being more intentional about saying, okay, let's look outside of our own network to see how we can bring more people in. Because while, I felt like it was my time to leave Apple, I can count on at least 2 people that I've helped get a job there who not only were women, but also African-American women. And, I don't go out here shouting that out or anything, but I felt like it was my due diligence. I'm in this space. Let me help others get here too. So, those are a couple things that I think can really help advance our workforce forward.
Yeah. No, I think those are good. Those are good ideas, and I definitely encourage not just women, but all the people on my team to attend conferences, speak at conferences, and try to experience other things so that you can grow yourself. I think if we just stay in our little bubble, we kind of lose some of the edge that we need to bring to our day jobs. One of the things that I know that when I was hiring, I recently hired a couple of people and women, if you actually, which is I didn't intend to hire females, but that's just what happened when I looked for the best candidate for the job, and that's who they were. But I do know that when the resumes came in, there was a surprising. There was actually a few. There wasn't that many women candidates, and I don't know why that is, other than the fact that I'm not seeing that many, come through college, and I would like to change that. What could we do? Like if we're writing a job description, or is there anything we could do that could maybe where we market those positions that could encourage more women applicants?
That's an excellent question. Yes, and I actually meant to mention that. So I'll give you a resource. The National Center for Women in Information Technology, ncwit.org, actually has literature on, the verbiage that you use for job descriptions to make it more inclusive. And I mean, I can send you that link if you like, but they have resources for that because, and again, like, I don't know, I'd rather give you the resource than to list those things out because I don't remember them right off my head.
Yeah. Send it. We'll add it to the show notes so people can go and visit that and get that information. I think that's really important too, is to have the right verbiage and be detailing the right story.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know if you've heard of this, but apparently, like, women are more likely to like think they're unqualified for a position based on like maybe the years of experience that's listed or, little things, whereas men will go for it anyway. But NC WIT, I helped one of my old teams at Apple actually with this very thing. And we just kind of used their literature around it. And it's simple things that you can do to make the job description more I guess, inviting. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I thought about that and I forgot to say it.
Yeah. And I have heard that, what you said about women. And I was listening to some training on negotiation skills, and the trainer mentioned that men are typically more, I don't know if cocky is the right word or arrogant, but they're more confident in their approach to ask for a higher salary than women are. And I don't know where that comes from, but what can we do to make sure that, I don't want my daughter to feel like she's, not capable and not worth asking for more salary or negotiating a deal. What can we do, maybe as a parent that I can do or to help my daughter overcome some of those things?
That's a great question. I think the more we talk about it, the more people are aware. Like, when I was figuring out what I was trying to do at Apple as far as like negotiating and things of that sort, I was super stressed out about it. But, I think having the conversation is a good start, because had I not heard about this whole thing about, oh, well, you should negotiate, and it's like, oh, I should? Like, why? Because I think sometimes, and I don't know if this is a generalization for women or not, but for me personally, it's kind of like, well, I think they're paying me enough, so why do I need to negotiate? Or some people have the mentality of like, they don't want to rock the boat. So I think there's the more discussions to be had, because it's not all about salary. And that's one thing I learned in this process too, is like, sometimes you can negotiate time off, or you can negotiate stock if you have that option. And so the more conversations that happen around what can I negotiate for? Why should I negotiate? I had one person tell me like, oh, well, if you have a lot of student loans, you can use that as a way to negotiate a higher salary or a bonus even, because then, it's like, okay, well, I have all these student loans that I want to pay off. So using that as a reason for asking for more money or getting a sign-on bonus. Like, there's so many other things that you can negotiate outside of salary. But had I not discussed this with anybody, or, had this not been a topic amongst my friend group, I would have never known. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll accept that offer.
Yeah, I know for me, like this is really dating myself. My first full-time tech job was a $28,000 a year salary. And I was so excited about that. I was like, yes, I did not negotiate one bit. And looking back on it today, there's so many reasons why you should negotiate, because you got to think about it. They're in the role where they're trying to hire someone. And if they're making you an offer, that means that they've already gotten approval from, HR, the managers, usually that person that's hiring you's boss, to make this offer to you. And if they have to go back to their bosses and say they didn't accept, they have to start this process all over again, and it's expensive to do that. And I've actually seen people negotiate vacation bank. So not just how much time that you get off, but that you wanted to start off with a bank because you were coming from somewhere where you banked, 3 weeks of vacation. So I want 3 weeks banked over when I accept this job. I've seen people negotiate time with executives. Like they want, as part of their deal, they want to make sure they have a one-on-one with one of the EVPs on a monthly basis. Yeah. And it may not seem like much, but that puts them right on that forefront of knowing what the company is the direction they're moving, knowing or being close to the leadership so that they're not the ones that are forgotten about whenever there are hard times within the company.
Wow, that's awesome. I didn't think about time with an executive. That's cool.
So I wanted to shift gears and hit on one more thing. I know you have a big event coming up in October where you're going to be speaking at TEDx Charlotte.
I was like, wait, I do?
Tell us a little bit about what that, I know you can't give away anything, but what can we expect from that?
TEDx Charlotte is going to be amazing. I'm actually really, really excited. Doing a TED Talk has always been one of my personal goals, and the opportunity presented itself. So I'm super duper excited. I'm going to be talking about a little bit of my story, but just kind of like, it's a combination of the digital divide and whatever that means, right, to whoever, but just how students can, just because you may have grown up in poverty or, in an area that's affected by the digital divide, like that conversation is really huge here in Charlotte. You still can make it, right? I grew up on the west side of Charlotte. That area is still affected by the digital divide today, but I was able to make it and, still be in Charlotte in tech, make it to California, come back, I was still able to make it out. But another premise of my talk is giving a girl or even a boy, honestly, a computer, that does not solve the digital divide. That does not solve our problem of not having enough women in tech. It also needs to come with training and the role models. We talked about social capital already. And so I'm just going to basically wrap my own journey and my own story as proof into this, and likely bring in maybe another scholar story on how, the training and the mentorship, in addition to them having their own piece of technology, has helped. It's like a 3-prong approach, and not just, okay, here, like a lot of students have the ability to take their Chromebooks from school to home. But if you don't have Wi-Fi at home, then you can't do anything with that Chromebook. It's more than just giving a student a computer or a tablet or a phone even. At least with the phone, you may have service, but it's a combination of all those things, and that, we really have to be intentional and do more than just think we have to give the student a computer for them to survive in the tech space.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good stuff. And I'm looking forward to hearing your talk as well. I know I gave a TEDx talk. It's been a few years ago now, and I know the nerves, going into that was I was so nervous, but everything works out okay in the end. So
I'm lucky that the coaches are awesome. Because I was really stressed out because I don't think what people understand, and I never thought about it, even though I've looked at so many TED Talks, that TED is an idea, right? It's not a pitch. It's not even, your own story a lot of the time. It's an idea. What is your idea? And that has stressed me out a lot.
Yeah. And what's that idea that's worth sharing, right? Well, this has been a lot of fun. Is there, can you just tell the audience a little bit how they can find out more about INTech Camp? And then if you have any last words of advice for our up and coming tech leaders,
Sure. If you want to follow INTech, we are INTECH Camp, CAMP, on all social channels, including LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So that way you can, stay in touch with what we're doing. INTechCamp.org is our website where you can sign up to volunteer, as well as register for our events. And donate. That's always nice. And so, that's how to keep up with INTech. And I think maybe my last word of advice is just kind of like, I didn't prepare for that one, but up and coming tech leaders, I would say don't be afraid to reach out to people for help or just advice in general. I think my one really good piece of advice, little known secret that I found while I was at Apple, was that if you want to meet with an executive, especially if you're an intern, interns get primetime access to everybody. If you want to meet with an executive, if you email them, figure out who their admin is, because their admin can get you on their calendar, and it might be months out, but you can make it happen. I've been able to be successful that way and have some meaningful conversations and now relationships with a few execs just because I emailed them and their admin to get on their calendar. So,
yeah, that's good. That's really good advice to hit up the admin. I know I've actually done that too to get some interviews before.
They know the calendar. They're in charge.
That's right. They're the gatekeepers. Well, I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for coming on the show.
No problem. Thank you so much, John. I appreciate it. And this is fun.
Hey guys, John back again. Just wanted to do one more ask about heading over to iTunes, Google Podcast, or iHeartRadio, or Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. And don't forget to subscribe. Leave me a rating and review. That would be awesome. Love to get those reviews in. Just gives me feedback and helps encourage others to listen to the show so we can share leadership to any and everyone that needs to hear these messages. That would be awesome. And thank you so much for listening.